Most gardeners spend every spring doing the same thing: buying seeds, starting seedlings, and replacing vegetables that disappeared over winter. It's such a normal part of gardening that most people never stop to question it. But what if some of your containers could keep producing food year after year without constantly starting over? The truth is that not all vegetables are meant to live for just one season. Some are perennial crops that return every spring from the same roots. Others multiply themselves, gradually becoming more productive as time goes on. Instead of investing months of work into a plant that disappears after harvest, you're building a food-producing system that gets stronger with age. For container gardeners, that's a huge advantage. Less replanting, fewer seeds to buy, and more reliable harvests from the same space. Today, we're counting down 15 perennial vegetables that can thrive in containers and reward a single planting with years of production. Some are surprisingly well known, while others are hidden gems that most gardeners have never heard of. And by the time we reach number 1, you'll see why some gardeners consider it one of the best long-term investments a food garden can make. Let's get started. Kicking off our countdown at number 15 is the Egyptian walking onion. Most onions live for a single season. You plant them, harvest them, and then start over again the following year. Egyptian walking onions follow a completely different strategy. Plant them once, and they can continue producing for years. What makes this plant unique is the way it reproduces. Instead of producing seeds at the top of its stalks, it forms clusters of miniature onions called bulbils. As these bulbils grow larger, their weight eventually pulls the stalk toward the ground. Once the bulbils touch soil, they begin rooting and developing into new plants. Over time, the onion appears to slowly move through the garden on its own, which is exactly how it earned the name walking onion. For container gardeners, this creates a steady source of fresh harvests. The green tops can be snipped like scallions and used throughout the growing season. The underground bulbs are also edible and can be used much like traditional onions. Unlike many vegetables that offer a single harvest before disappearing, Egyptian walking onions continue returning year after year. They're also remarkably tough. These onions tolerate freezing temperatures, survive winter in many regions, and rarely suffer from serious pest problems. Once established, they often become one of the most reliable plants in the entire garden. Some gardeners grow the same clump for years, harvesting from it season after season. Perhaps the strangest part is watching the plant reproduce itself. Most vegetables depend entirely on the gardener for propagation. Egyptian walking onions do much of the work themselves. Given enough time, a single plant can eventually turn into an entire colony of onions, all descended from that original container planting. Moving down to number 14, we step back in time with sorrel, one of the oldest perennial vegetables still grown today. While most leafy greens disappear when summer heat arrives, sorrel often keeps going. Plant it once, and it can provide harvests for years from the same container. Sorrel forms a dense clump of bright green leaves that emerge early each spring. In many gardens, it begins growing long before tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers are even planted. That early growth makes it one of the first fresh vegetables available after winter, a quality that gardeners have appreciated for centuries. The leaves are harvested continuously, rather than all at once. Simply remove the outer leaves and allow the center of the plant to keep producing new growth. Because the root system survives year after year, established plants often become larger and more productive with age. A mature sorrel plant can provide dozens of harvests over the course of a growing season. One reason sorrel has remained popular for so long is its adaptability. It tolerates cooler weather, handles partial shade well, and grows happily in containers. Unlike delicate greens that demand perfect conditions, sorrel tends to be forgiving. Once established, it becomes a dependable source of fresh leaves with relatively little maintenance. The flavor is what surprises most first-time growers. Sorrel has a natural lemony taste despite containing no citrus at all. The leaves add brightness to salads, soups, and sauces, giving dishes a fresh flavor that few other vegetables can match. For hundreds of years, cooks across Europe relied on sorrel whenever they wanted a touch of acidity before lemons became widely available. Even today, a single leaf is often enough to understand why this ancient vegetable has survived for so many generations. Sitting securely at number 13 is garlic chives, a perennial vegetable that proves some of the most productive plants are also the simplest. While many gardeners grow ordinary chives for their mild onion flavor, garlic chives offer something different. The leaves have a gentle garlic taste, making them one of the most versatile plants you can keep in a container. Unlike annual herbs that need to be replanted every year, garlic chives return from the same root system season after season. As temperatures warm in spring, fresh green shoots emerge from the soil and quickly begin producing harvestable leaves. The more established the plant becomes, the more productive it tends to be. Many gardeners find themselves harvesting from the same container for years without ever needing to replace the plant. One of the reasons garlic chives are so valuable is their ability to recover after harvesting. Instead of slowing down when leaves are removed, the plant responds by producing even more growth. A quick trim often leads to another flush of fresh leaves just a few weeks later. This cycle can repeat many times throughout the growing season, providing a nearly continuous supply of flavorful greens. Garlic chives are also surprisingly adaptable. They tolerate heat, cold, and occasional neglect better than many popular vegetables. Their compact growth habit makes them well suited for containers, raised beds, and small urban gardens where space is limited. Even gardeners with only a balcony or patio can enjoy years of harvests from a single pot. Late in the season, the plant produces clusters of small white flowers that attract bees and other pollinators. These blooms are edible as well, and are often used as garnishes or added to salads. In many gardens, garlic chives become one of those plants that quietly earns its place year after year, producing food long after more demanding vegetables have disappeared. For number 12, we uncover a forgotten piece of gardening history: Good King Henry, a vegetable so old that it was being grown long before modern supermarkets existed. Once common throughout Europe, this perennial edible has largely disappeared from modern gardens, which is unfortunate because it offers something many gardeners want: multiple harvests from the same plant year after year. At first glance, Good King Henry doesn't look particularly impressive. It forms a modest clump of green leaves and grows slowly compared to fast annual vegetables. But its strength lies in its longevity. Once established, the plant develops a strong root system that returns every spring, producing fresh growth without needing to be replanted. The leaves can be harvested and cooked, much like spinach. Young leaves are generally the most tender, while larger leaves are often used in soups, stews, and cooked dishes. In spring, gardeners can also harvest the young shoots before they fully develop. These tender shoots are sometimes compared to asparagus, which is one reason good King Henry earned the nickname poor man's asparagus. Because it is a perennial, productivity often improves over time. During its first season, the plant may seem relatively modest. By the third or fourth year, however, it can provide significantly larger harvests. This long-term growth pattern is one reason perennial vegetables were so valuable to earlier generations of gardeners. Rather than starting from scratch every season, they invested in crops that became more productive as they matured. Perhaps the most fascinating thing about good King Henry is how rarely it appears in modern gardens, despite centuries of successful cultivation. Long before seed catalogs were filled with hundreds of vegetable varieties, gardeners relied on dependable plants like this one to provide food year after year. In many ways, growing good King Henry today is like preserving a small piece of gardening history. Just outside our top 10, claiming the 11th spot, is Lovage. If you've ever wished celery could survive for years and keep coming back on its own, Lovage might be the answer. This old-fashioned perennial has been grown for centuries and was once a staple in kitchen gardens throughout Europe. While celery requires fresh planting every season, Lovage can continue producing from the same root system for many years. The first thing gardeners notice is its impressive size. Given enough room, Lovage can grow into a large, leafy plant that produces an abundance of stems and foliage. Fortunately, it adapts surprisingly well to large containers. Once established, it becomes a reliable source of fresh harvests throughout much of the growing season. The flavor is often described as concentrated celery. The leaves can be added to soups, stews, salads, and stocks, while the stems can be used in many of the same ways as celery. Because the flavor is stronger than ordinary celery, a little goes a long way. Even a small harvest can add significant flavor to an entire meal. Another advantage of Lovage is its resilience. The plant handles cool weather well and often returns vigorously each spring. As the root system expands over time, harvests generally become larger and more consistent. Many gardeners discover that a mature Lovage plant can produce far more edible growth than they expected from a single container. What makes Lovage especially interesting is that nearly every part of the plant has been used historically. The leaves, stems, roots, and even seeds have all found their way into kitchens at one time or another. Few perennial vegetables offer that level of versatility. It's one of those rare plants that can provide both flavor and productivity for years with a single planting. We are officially breaking into our top 10. Looking back at these first 5 plants, from the self-multiplying walking onion to historical staples like good King Henry and Lovage, which one has surprised you the most so far? Let me know down in the comments. I read every single one. As we move into the next section of our countdown, the plants become even more resilient, heavily productive, and in some cases, completely unheard of. Let's dive in. Breaking into our top 10 is Turkish Rocket, one of the most overlooked perennial vegetables in the world. Most gardeners have never grown it, and many have never even heard of it. Yet once established, this hardy perennial can provide harvests for years while asking very little in return. Turkish Rocket belongs to the Brassica family, making it a distant relative of kale, cabbage, and broccoli. Unlike many of its annual relatives, however, it doesn't need to be replanted every season. The plant develops a deep root system that allows it to return year after year, producing fresh leaves as temperatures begin to warm. The young leaves are the part most commonly harvested. They have a mild flavor when young, but develop a stronger, more peppery taste as they mature. Many gardeners prefer harvesting the leaves early, when they are at their most tender. The flower buds are also edible and are often compared to a perennial version of broccoli, providing yet another harvest from the same plant. One reason Turkish Rocket performs so well as a long-term crop is its toughness. It tolerates poor conditions better than many vegetables and can survive periods of drought once established. This durability made it valuable in traditional gardens where dependable food crops were essential. Perhaps the most surprising thing about Turkish Rocket is how productive it can become with age. Like many perennial vegetables, it often spends its first season building roots. But once established, the plant begins producing increasingly generous harvests each year. A mature specimen can become a substantial source of edible greens and flower shoots, all from a single planting that keeps returning season after season. Down at number 9, we meet tree collards, a plant that almost seems to break the rules of vegetable gardening. Most collards are grown as annuals or biennials, but tree collards can continue growing for years, producing harvest after harvest from the same plant. In mild climates, they can become surprisingly large, sometimes reaching heights that make them look more like small trees than vegetables. What makes tree collards so valuable is their incredible productivity. Instead of forming a single head or producing one major harvest, they continuously generate new leaves along their stems. Gardeners simply harvest the older leaves from the bottom while allowing the younger leaves near the top to continue growing. This creates a steady cycle of production that can last for years. The leaves are similar to traditional collard greens, but are often considered more tender, especially when harvested young. They can be steamed, sautéed, added to soups, or used in many of the same recipes as kale and collards. Because the plant keeps producing new growth, a single container can provide an impressive amount of food over time. Tree collards also benefit from maturity. Unlike annual vegetables that begin their lives from seed every spring, established plants start each growing season with a fully developed root system. This allows them to grow quickly and support larger harvests. As the plant ages, its productivity often increases rather than decreases. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about tree collards is how long they can live. Some gardeners have maintained the same plant for many years, taking regular harvests from it season after season. In a gardening world dominated by annual crops, that kind of longevity is surprisingly rare. Securing the 8th position is sea kale, one of the most unusual perennial vegetables you can grow in a container. Native to the coastlines of Europe, this plant evolved in tough environments where many other vegetables would struggle. Over time, it developed into a remarkably resilient perennial, capable of producing food for years from a single planting. Sea kale offers multiple harvests throughout its life. The young shoots are highly prized and are often compared to asparagus. As the season progresses, the leaves can be harvested and cooked, much like traditional kale or collard greens. Later, even the flower buds become edible, giving gardeners several different crops from the same plant. One reason sea kale is so attractive to perennial gardeners is its longevity. Once established, it develops a strong root system that returns every spring. While many vegetables disappear at the end of the season, sea kale simply goes dormant and then re-emerges when conditions improve. The plant is also surprisingly ornamental. Its blue-green leaves create a striking appearance in containers, and when it flowers, it produces large clusters of delicate white blooms. Many gardeners grow it not only for food, but also because it adds beauty to the garden. Perhaps the most fascinating thing about sea kale is that it was once considered a luxury vegetable in parts of Europe. Before modern transportation made fresh produce widely available, gardeners valued crops that could reliably return year after year. Sea kale became one of those treasured plants, producing edible shoots every spring from the same root system. Even today, it's still one of the few vegetables capable of providing asparagus-like harvests without requiring annual replanting. Landing at number 7 is the Welsh onion, a perennial vegetable that proves you don't need a complicated plant to achieve long-term harvests. Despite its name, Welsh onion didn't originate in Wales. The word Welsh comes from an old term meaning foreign, and this onion has been cultivated across Asia and Europe for centuries. Wherever it has been grown, gardeners have appreciated one thing above all else: its ability to keep coming back. Unlike bulb onions that are harvested once and removed from the garden, Welsh onions grow in dense clumps that expand over time. New shoots continually emerge from the base of the plant, creating an ongoing supply of fresh green onions. As the clump becomes larger, harvests become more frequent and more productive. The leaves can be used exactly like scallions. They're excellent in soups, stir-fries, salads, and countless everyday recipes. Because the plant keeps producing new shoots, gardeners can harvest repeatedly without worrying about exhausting the crop. Simply remove a few stems and allow the rest of the plant to continue growing. One reason Welsh onion has remained popular for generations is its reliability. It tolerates cold weather extremely well, and often survives conditions that would damage more delicate vegetables. Once established, it requires very little maintenance beyond occasional watering and feeding. In many climates, it begins growing early in spring and continues producing long after other vegetables have slowed down. What makes Welsh onion particularly valuable is its consistency. Some perennial vegetables have short harvest windows. Welsh onion provides useful harvests throughout much of the year. A mature clump can become so productive that gardeners rarely need to buy green onions from the store again. Perhaps that's why this humble plant has remained in cultivation for hundreds of years. It may not be the most dramatic vegetable on this list, but few crops deliver such dependable harvests from such a small amount of space. Coming in at number 6 is Okinawa spinach, a perennial leafy green that looks almost too beautiful to be a vegetable. With glossy green leaves and deep purple undersides, it often attracts attention as an ornamental plant before gardeners realize it's also edible. But beneath its attractive appearance lies one of the easiest perennial greens you can grow in a container. Unlike traditional spinach, which is often grown as a cool season annual, Okinawa spinach thrives in warm conditions. In frost-free regions, it can continue growing year after year from the same plant. Even in cooler climates, gardeners often overwinter cuttings indoors and re-establish plants season after season. The leaves are tender, nutritious, and can be eaten raw when young or cooked like other leafy greens. Because the plant grows rapidly during warm weather, harvests can be surprisingly frequent. New stems and leaves develop continuously, allowing gardeners to harvest regularly without slowing the plant down. Another advantage is its growth habit. Rather than forming a compact clump, Okinawa spinach spreads gently and produces a steady stream of new shoots. This makes it particularly productive in containers where space needs to be used efficiently. A well-established plant can provide months of leafy harvests from a relatively small growing area. Perhaps the most interesting thing about Okinawa spinach is that many people grow it for its appearance alone. The contrast between the green tops and purple undersides makes it one of the most attractive edible plants available. Visitors often assume it's an ornamental ground cover, only to discover that it's actually a productive vegetable. Few plants manage to combine beauty, productivity, and longevity quite as effectively as Okinawa spinach. We are now entering our top 5, the absolute elite of perennial container crops. We've covered some incredible survivors so far, but these final 5 are the heavyweights. They offer the largest harvests, the most vigorous growth, and the longest lifespans of any plants on our list. Kicking off our elite top 5 is Malabar spinach, a plant that confuses many gardeners the first time they see it. Despite its name, it isn't actually spinach at all. But when it comes to long-term productivity, it often outperforms true spinach by a wide margin. In warm climates, Malabar spinach can behave like a perennial, continuing to grow and produce for years from the same root system. Unlike traditional spinach, which tends to struggle in summer heat, Malabar spinach seems to thrive when temperatures rise. The plant produces vigorous climbing vines covered with thick, glossy leaves that can be harvested continuously throughout the growing season. As long as new growth continues, gardeners can keep collecting leaves without removing the entire plant. This growth habit makes it particularly well suited for containers. Give it a trellis, cage, or other support structure, and it will quickly climb upward rather than spreading across valuable growing space. A single container can support a surprisingly large amount of edible growth, making it one of the most productive leafy vegetables for small gardens. The leaves have a mild flavor and a slightly succulent texture. They can be eaten fresh in salads when young, or cooked like spinach when mature. Because the plant grows so rapidly, harvests can become frequent enough that many gardeners struggle to keep up with production during peak season. Perhaps the most impressive feature of Malabar spinach is its sheer vigor. While many leafy greens slow down as summer becomes hotter, Malabar spinach often reaches its peak. In warm regions, mature vines can continue producing enormous quantities of leaves for months, turning a single container into a dependable source of fresh greens. Claiming the 4th spot on our list is Chaya, often called tree spinach. If productivity alone determined this ranking, Chaya could easily compete for the #1 position. This remarkable perennial vegetable has been grown for generations throughout Central America, where it earned a reputation as one of the most dependable food plants available. Chaya grows as a large shrub rather than a traditional vegetable. Once established, it produces an abundance of leafy growth that can be harvested repeatedly throughout the year. Instead of planting new seeds every season, gardeners simply continue harvesting from the same plant as it becomes larger and more productive. One reason Chaya is so highly valued is its resilience. It tolerates heat, drought, and challenging growing conditions far better than many leafy vegetables. In warm climates, it can continue growing for years with very little intervention. This durability makes it particularly attractive for gardeners interested in self-sufficiency and long-term food production. The leaves are highly nutritious, but they contain natural compounds that make them toxic when raw. They must be boiled or cooked thoroughly for about 15 minutes before eating to neutralize these compounds. Gardeners remove the younger stems and leaves while allowing the plant to continue producing fresh growth. Because Chaya grows vigorously, it often replaces harvested material surprisingly quickly. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Chaya is the amount of food a mature plant can produce. What begins as a relatively small cutting can eventually develop into a substantial shrub, capable of supplying regular harvests throughout much of the year. In many traditional gardens, a single Chaya plant becomes a dependable source of leafy greens for years, making it one of the most productive perennial vegetables ever cultivated. As we enter the top 3, get ready for the Jerusalem artichoke, a perennial vegetable that produces one of the most impressive harvests on this entire list. Despite the name, it isn't from Jerusalem, and it isn't an artichoke. It's actually a species of sunflower that develops edible tubers underground. Once planted, it has a remarkable ability to return year after year. Above ground, Jerusalem artichoke produces tall stems topped with cheerful yellow flowers that resemble small sunflowers. But the real harvest is hidden beneath the soil. As the growing season progresses, the plant channels energy into producing clusters of tubers. When harvest time arrives, gardeners often discover far more food beneath the surface than they expected. One reason this plant has remained popular for centuries is its persistence. Even after harvesting, small tubers left in the soil frequently sprout and grow into new plants the following season. This natural tendency to regenerate means a single planting can continue producing for years. In fact, many gardeners find that once Jerusalem artichokes become established, the challenge is not keeping them alive, but keeping them contained. Large containers work especially well because they help manage the plant's vigorous growth while still allowing plenty of room for tuber production. As the root system develops over time, harvests often become larger and more reliable. Few perennial vegetables combine such longevity with such substantial yields. Perhaps the most surprising thing about Jerusalem artichokes is that they were once an important staple food across parts of North America and Europe. Long before modern agriculture focused on annual crops, gardeners appreciated plants that could reliably return year after year. Jerusalem artichokes earned that reputation through sheer productivity, producing generous harvests from a plant that seemed determined to come back. Our runner-up at number 2 is Yacon, one of the most underrated perennial food crops in the world. Native to the Andes Mountains of South America, Yacon produces large, sweet tubers that have been cultivated for centuries. Yet despite its impressive qualities, many gardeners still have never heard of it. At first glance, Yacon resembles a sunflower relative, producing large leaves and vigorous growth throughout the season. Beneath the soil, however, the plant is quietly developing its real treasure: clusters of crisp, juicy tubers that can reach impressive sizes by harvest time. What makes Yacon especially valuable as a perennial crop is the way it regenerates. The edible tubers are harvested, but the crown of the plant is preserved and replanted. From that crown, entirely new plants emerge the following season. This cycle can continue year after year, allowing gardeners to maintain the same genetic line indefinitely. The flavor often surprises first-time growers. Unlike potatoes or other starchy root crops, Yacon tubers are sweet, crisp, and refreshing. Many people compare them to a cross between an apple and a watermelon. They can be eaten fresh, added to fruit salads, or stored for later use. As Yacon matures, productivity tends to increase. A healthy plant can produce an astonishing amount of food from a single container, particularly when given a long growing season. This combination of high yields, perennial growth, and unusual flavor has earned Yacon a devoted following among gardeners who discover it. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Yacon is how unknown it remains outside its native region. While many gardeners spend years searching for productive perennial crops, Yacon has quietly been delivering abundant harvests in South America for generations, proving that some of the world's most valuable food plants are still hiding in plain sight. Finally, taking the absolute crown at number 1 is asparagus. Perhaps the ultimate example of a plant once, harvest for years vegetable. While many of the crops on this list are unfamiliar to the average gardener, asparagus has earned its reputation across generations. Few vegetables demonstrate the power of perennial gardening more clearly than this one. The first thing new growers need to understand is that asparagus requires patience. Unlike annual vegetables that reward you within a few months, asparagus spends its early years building an extensive root system beneath the soil. During this establishment period, the plant is investing in its future. That patience, however, can pay off for an incredibly long time. Once mature, asparagus produces tender spears every spring. These young shoots emerge directly from the crown and grow rapidly, often reaching harvest size in just a matter of days. During the harvest season, gardeners can collect spear after spear from the same plant, enjoying one of the most prized vegetables in the garden. What makes asparagus truly special is its longevity. While many vegetables disappear after a single season, a healthy asparagus planting can remain productive for well over a decade. Some gardeners report harvesting from the same crowns for 15, 20, or even more years. Very few food crops offer that kind of long-term return from a single planting. Asparagus can also perform surprisingly well in large containers. While it requires more space than some of the smaller vegetables on this list, the reward is a perennial crop that comes back reliably every spring. Once the harvest period ends, the plant develops tall, fern-like foliage that continues gathering energy for the following year. In a sense, the plant is always preparing for future harvests. Perhaps that's why asparagus has remained a favorite for centuries. It represents a different way of thinking about gardening. Instead of focusing only on this season's harvest, you're investing in harvests years into the future. Every spear that emerges in spring is the result of energy the plant stored long before. It's one of the clearest examples of how perennial vegetables become more valuable with time rather than less. The traditional gardening cycle teaches us to work hard every spring, planting new seeds only to watch everything die when winter arrives. But as you've seen today, it doesn't have to be that way. By dedicating just a few of your containers to perennial vegetables, whether it's the self-multiplying walking onion, the massive underground yields of Yacon, or the decades-long return of asparagus, you change the entire dynamic of your garden. You stop starting from scratch and begin building equity in your soil. Your patio or balcony transforms from a temporary seasonal project into a permanent food source that actually gets stronger, larger, and more productive with every passing year. Now, I want to hear from you. Out of all 15 perennial vegetables we covered today, which one are you most excited to plant in your containers this season? Let me know down in the comments below. I read every single one. If this video helped you look at container gardening in a completely new way, make sure to hit that subscribe button to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next garden.